have states. What, we can't have a state, is what he's saying to them. That's the normal condition for a people. Yet we're the most abnormal of all peoples. Ask only the same conditions. We only ask what the Albanians enjoy. So nothing of the French and the English, and that's called too much. So he's laughing at them. And that, I think his attitude here is something that would bring honor to him in the eyes of the people listening to him. He's not afraid to stand up and say it outright, what he sees as the truth. Look, I should understand it if the answer was, it's impossible. If you said to me, no, it's impossible, you can't have this. Okay, but when the answer is, it's too much, you're asking too much, which is what we still hear now, worse today than before. After 3 wars and everything else, I cannot understand that Baker wants to throw in the Palestine problem as a sop for the Iraq problem. And what the Palestine problem has to do with the Iraq problem, I have no idea. The fact that Shiites and Sunnis are willing to murder each other in an unlimited amount of violence and murderousness, what's that got to do with, the Golan Heights, which he put in his report? It's the same thing. It's just the Peel Commission all over again. And with a prime minister like Ehud Olmert, you never know what's going to happen. But Ehud Olmert wouldn't be there without Sharon. And with Sharon in a coma, endless coma, who was it? Robertson said he was punished by God. A lot of people feel that way who believe in God in Israel and among the evangelical community for what he did in the Gaza Strip to those people. Maybe he wasn't, who knows? I have no idea what God has to do with any of this. But Pat Robertson expressed that, what a lot of Israelis feel, I can tell you that. In any case, Olmert wouldn't be there without this situation with Sharon. And if there were election today, Olmert would be gone and Netanyahu would be in. But the problem is not going to be an election now because they can hang on by making political deals for another 4 or 5 years. They just make coalitions and they give this person this little bailiwick and that person this bailiwick, and they can cobble together a coalition because Olmert hates Netanyahu. And Netanyahu basically is Jabotinsky without the eloquence. That's basically what Netanyahu is. He's a descendant of his father, who is a descendant in effect of Jabotinsky. But if you didn't know these things, you wouldn't be able to put these people in their context. Okay, basically you see Eisenman, you're saying the same thing they are saying. Yes, because I have a similar mindset to these people, I have to be frank. You can see that, I use other examples and he uses the same example. He says the Albanians. I cannot understand that. I remind you, excuse me for quoting something from your own literature, he's a very literate person that you're all familiar with. This is a very funny testimony. I'm going to quote to you something from Oliver Twist. I guess we're getting to the Christmas Carol this year. Around this time we always get to the Christmas Carol. Dickens and so on. He wrote these other books, and he gives this example. The commotion of the famous institution when Oliver Twist came and asked for more, that is, more food on the table or whatever in this orphanage. He said more because he did not know how to express it. What Oliver Twist really meant was this: will you just give me that normal portion which is necessary for a boy of my age to be able to live? I assure you that you face here today the Jewish people with its demands, and Oliver Twist, who has unfortunately no concessions to make. What? You're going to close the gates of Palestine because of uproar here? What can be the concessions? We've got to save millions, many millions. He says it to you. I do not know whether it's a question of rehousing 1/3, half, or a quarter. I do not know, but it's a question of millions. That's what it is, millions. He knows. He knows what's coming, poor man. He died in 1940. Thank God for that. For him, he didn't have to witness what he knew was coming. Certainly the way out is to evacuate those portions of the diaspora which have become no good, which hold no promise of any possibility of livelihood. The situation has gotten dire since Herzl, actually. And the Weitzman types are well-meaning, but they are not able to really react in any way to it, and maybe their way is better, who knows? You have to judge that. I just don't like people unable to speak plainly. And to concentrate all those refugees in some place where they should not be diaspora, that's what Herzl was going to do, you see. It didn't matter where at that point, the situation was so dire. Uganda, wherever. Our demand for a Jewish, I am going to make a terrible confession. He doesn't even cover it over. That's what the Jews are still talking about. They're not going to accept the Palestinians coming back to so-called previous homes. We don't even know how many have actually originally come from there or not. But one of the things that in the negotiations for the peace process between the Palestinians and Israelis is the resettlement of the Palestinians back in Israel. One of the reasons that the Omer party is giving up areas is that they feel that they're going to become a minority given the birth rates. So the demand, the problem is still as it was 70 years ago. Our demand for a Jewish majority is not a maximum, it's a minimum. We need a majority, not because we're anti-Arab, not because we're racist. We don't want to hurt the Arabs or anybody. We just know that if we don't have sovereignty over a place in the earth, we will not survive. That's it. That's what he's saying. It's just an inevitable stage if only we're allowed to go on salvaging our people. That's what Brandeis is saying. So the majority, it's not being a racist, as people like to portray it or so. It's, again, I frankly wouldn't even worry about that. I think that if everyone is constrained to the same conditions of life that you find in Israel, and I've been there and lived there, the birth rate comes down quickly because people have to pay mortgages and taxes and everything else, and they can't have the birth rates that they can have in different environments. But the country, you see, he doesn't agree with Eisenman. The point when the Jews will reach a majority in that country will not be the point of saturation yet, because with 1 million more Jews in Palestine today, you could already have a Jewish majority. There's not even 1 million Arabs there at this time. But there's certainly 3-4 million in the East who are virtually knocking at the door, asking for admission, asking for salvation. He says it, and what do the British do? Slam it. I have the profoundest feeling for the Arab case, insofar as their case is not exaggerated. That's the same today. This commission have already been able to make up their minds as to whether there is an individual hardship to the Arabs of Palestine as men deriving from the Jewish colonization. Are they being really harmed by this? Maybe they're upper classes, and that's what people don't realize. The Arab upper class felt maybe that they were losing their status. But the Arab lower classes were really happy with the immigration.